Hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. My friends, I'm not a fan of taxation. That's just within my bones. There's something that reacts very viscerally when someone takes what I own to appropriate it to some broader cause, which I may not even be a party to. But I understand and accept certain things about society and the world. Even if I do not like them, I understand how to live within them and challenge them in my own ways. However, there's a difference between understanding something and being complacent when that something is being pushed to the nth degree by people who stand to benefit from it being pushed to the nth degree. And this is where we get our topic today. President Joe Biden has just announced a $2.3 trillion tax increase on households that have up to 100 million in annual household, not annual, in general household income or more, and a tax on the unrealized gains of that household. This tax is suspected to impact 0.01% of households and or 20,000 Americans. And it would raise over $361 billion in revenue over 10 years. Now, considering how much America spends on defense and funding wars across, or funding a empire across the world, that's a drop in the bucket. That's absolutely nothing. We spend more on defense than we do on anything else. And so that $361 billion is nothing, but that's a different story. And so this article says, under the proposal, the wealthiest Americans would be required to pay a tax rate of at least 20% of their full income, or the combination of wage income and whatever they made in unrealized gains. If a billionaire is not paying 20% on their income, they will owe a top-up payment that makes the difference to meet the new minimum. So the government can change the standard whenever they want to, just to make sure they can get your money and your property. My friends, Joe Biden's justification, because whenever you see something like this, we have this reaction. We want to react to disgusted. And that's fine. We can be disgusted at this. But we have to be able to intelligibly dispute it as well with the force of philosophy and right reason, as Cicero and the natural law theorists that came after Cicero would say. And so Joe Biden's justification for this entire matter is the following. He said that we are reducing the Trump deficits and returning our fiscal house in order, which is interesting because Biden is spending us into oblivion with infrastructure projects and other projects that are certainly going to balloon the deficit. We have record inflation, but that doesn't matter, I guess. He also said that the budget makes prudent investment in economic growth a more equitable economy, while making sure corporations and the very wealthy pay their fair share. Well, my friends, I've explored in other videos why the word equity has been bastardized by people who, once again, don't understand the foundations and meanings of words. They just understand what words are associated with. My friends, equity was, I'm just going to be very quick with this. Equity is a 14th century word which in general means to be fair in accordance with the principles of natural justice. The principles of natural justice say that what is mine, what is yours, and there is an imposition upon all of us in society and in the government not to interfere with what is mine and to return to me what is taken from me by those who transgress against my natural rights. That is the idea of justice, simply put. And equity actually is built into this idea. Now, in the 1980s, though, equity did not become about principle and preservation. Equity became about granting and giving, which ultimately means interference. So whereas equity was once a principle of non-interference, it is now a principle of interference, as Biden has made it. But there's something more pernicious happening here, my friends. And this is the issue of taxation. Many people say taxation is theft. While that may be true, something bigger is going on here, my friends. It is not going to be sufficiently explained by simply saying taxation is theft. Taxation, especially when it is weaponized to punish the most well-off in society, is the epitome of envy. It is the equivalent to coveting your neighbor's goods, except the moral perception of taxation is flipped. Whereas coveting your neighbor's good is expressly a bad thing, people who promote Biden's form of plunder, 20% of a billionaire's income, have dressed up their proposals under the veneer of benevolence, i.e., they must pay their fair share. We are dying a death of 1,000 cuts. Billionaires are dying a death of 1,000 cuts under this plan in the name of benevolence. Isn't that interesting? They're being sacrificed to an abstraction. Because, my friends, What is fair share? Many astute commentators have pointed out that fair share has no fundamental objective meaning because, once again, what is fair is dependent in the eye of the beholder, unless we're using the principle of equity as properly understood in the 14th century, which adheres to universals. But unfortunately, that principle no longer is universal. It is specific. It is about advancing certain people at the detriment of other people. So once again, what is fair share? In this postmodern hell we live in, there is no fair share. And also, just as a moral matter, there is no fair amount of someone else's money that you can take, because the action itself is expressly inequitable and thus expressly unfair. You taking someone's money for the benefit of the public or for whatever is expressly unfair. So to use fair share to describe and endorse an action that is inherently unfair appears to me to be a contradiction. But there's a bigger issue here, my friends. As I mentioned, taxation, especially when it is cloaked under the guise of fair share, is simply envy, because it presumes that someone else's gain is your loss. It presumes that someone else has an obligation to take what they have and give it to you or give it to society in general just because they have it. And this is where we get into the philosophical issues with this. My friends, it is not easy to be a billionaire. It is not easy to be a millionaire. It is not easy to make wealth. Plenty of people can gain wealth. But to make wealth and invest and sustain wealth is a very harrowing prospect. If you doubt me and you say, oh, Christian, these billionaires have their yachts and they have their offshore bank accounts, they don't have any struggles, then, and if you doubt me about the difficulties and the delicacies of maintaining and preserving wealth, then you should probably look at observation, because observation is one of the most important tools we can use to understand the world. In a study of wealthy families, the Williams Group said, they're a wealth consultancy firm, found that 70% of well-to-do families lose their wealth by the second generation, and by the third generation, 90%. They are particularly talking about families that inherited wealth. Just because someone inherited wealth does not therefore mean that they will be able to keep wealth. So it therefore follows from that premise that wealth is not simply something that you can get and have forever. Wealth is something that you have to maintain, preserve, and if you didn't have it beforehand, cultivate. Therefore, it requires certain tactics, methodologies. It requires a certain mindset. And ergo, wealth, the preservation and the perpetuation thereof, requires a genius. This is where we get to Thoreau. Henry David Thoreau in Walden was trying to do many things. He was trying to explain his relationship with society, the things that he thought were holding people down from achieving their divine individual excellence. He was trying to explain a bunch of different things. And in Walden, Thoreau said about charity that one should not stand in between a man and his genius. Everyone has a genius to do certain things, which disposes us of certain actions. Some people are good at some things, some people are good at other things. And what we're good at, in accordance to our conscience, is what should guide our decision making, not the dictate or mandate of society. So my friends, if we've already established that wealth making and wealth production is indeed a genius, not everybody can do it. There's a reason why there's so few billionaires in the world. There's a reason why there's so few millionaires in the world. There's a reason why there's so few people in the world that have an income above 100,000, because it is so difficult to create, maintain, or perpetuate wealth. If this is the case, then wealth maintenance and all that stuff has to be a form of genius. So what taxation does, however, is try to penalize you simply because of your genius. It tries to penalize you simply because of who you are. And my friends, the government has no right, no moral right to penalize you simply because of who you are, particularly if who you are does nothing but A, have no effect on other people in a negative way, or B, actually helps other people. We've seen the war cry from progressives who have attacked relentlessly billionaires for making record profits during COVID, even though most people that made record profits during COVID are the people like Walmart and others who kept the economy running, who doubled the pay of their employees, and who actually made sure that a lot of people who would have been otherwise homeless and unemployed had a place to go, had a resource to use to continue to feed their families without having to take a handout from the government government, these handouts of which have actually gotten us into this inflation thing in the first place, one of the many factors. So my friends, Biden's assault here is not simply on people who have a lot of money. It's on people who presumably have had this genius, who have cultivated this financial literacy, and have thus far used that to maintain, invest, and push their skills and their value into the society, which has in some cases benefited others. Some cases others have lost from that, but ultimately it's nothing more than who they are. And thus, this is envy. My friends, when you're envious of who someone else is, you can't see who you are. Socrates said that you need to know yourself. Know thyself. The unexamined life is not worth living. That's one of the most famous philosophical motifs. And it is clearly a mark of an unexamined mind who looks at someone else's wealth, tries to take it without actually considering any of the moral principles surrounding wealth, any of the geniuses or the ideas surrounding the creation of wealth, and then appropriates it for some cause that once again may not even be noble and is inherently rendered questionable by the fact that you have to force someone to pay for it. My friends, the government is not in the business, or should not be in the business of making us neglect our genius. But unfortunately it is. And this is a fundamental problem. Because not only is this a problem on a material level, you're taking someone's wealth, it's also a problem on a fundamentally existential level. Because if you try to punish me and punish me for who I am and obscure who I am, because you don't think that it's good enough, then my goodness, that reflects a fundamental hatred for your human man. Envy is ignorance, as Emerson said. It is ignorance of who you are. It is ignorance of the world. And good policy cannot flow from ignorance. Good policy must flow from prudent consideration based on eternal moral truths, and that is natural law, that is Declaration of Independence, and that is the eternalities which constitute the American constitutional order and fuel what is supposed to be a preserver of liberty, not a plunderer at the hands of those who want to pursue their own power. Think on it. My friends, I love you guys so much. If you love me, patreon.com/PhilCWatson or PayPal, officialcwatson@gmail.com. You can get me on Discord, which is comment section down below. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. This message is dynamite. We need to get out here as much as possible. My friends, I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive.